All right, we are recording. So thank you all for joining us for this conversation, and for anyone who might be listening into the future, thank you for taking the time to listen and hang out with us for the next hour or so. So I'm Brooke. I lead community impact at Reebok, which means I have the absolute pleasure of working with some incredible organizations in the Boston community. Also a passionate fitness instructor and health coach, and just kind of advocate for health and wellness. And I have my colleague Avery here.
Hi Avery.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys. Yeah, my name's Avery, and I am currently the Community Impact Co-op at Reebok, which means I work really closely with Brooke, but it also means I'm a full-time undergraduate student at Northeastern. And there I founded and I'm the president of a women's fitness organization, and the whole goal is empowering women through fitness. And so we host a lot of like wellness events, as well as, workouts and stuff like that to kind of foster a community of supportive women. So this is, right in my wheelhouse of kind of my passion for health and wellness. And then I'm currently sheltering in place back in California. So I'm back with my family now because our dorm kicked us out, but everything's going well. So.
Nice. Good.
Yeah. So basically the point of this project, everybody, no matter where they are in the world or what their situation is, has to adapt to something. Every day there's a new challenge, there's new news. It's insane. So we don't really know how long it's going to last, what changes are going to happen, and even the next day, next weeks, it's really kind of touch and go at this moment. So I think the bottom line is, how can we best manage this situation? And that's kind of what we're here to talk about is, how can we make the best out of it and cope in productive ways? And how can we keep ourselves fulfilled and also, take care of ourselves and the people around us and look out for our communities? So we kind of created this project to find an answer to those questions. And you guys are, you have backgrounds in this and can speak to issues surrounding kind of trauma and anxiety, and now I guess specifically with COVID. But we just want to talk about kind of our new normal and what that looks like, ways to cope, and just kind of, bring in different areas of expertise, so that hopefully people, hearing this can find a little bit of, positivity or help. I think that's really the bottom line.
Yeah, so we have three incredible individuals here to kind of guide us through, who are sitting at this quote unquote digital table. So in order to avoid that kind of awkward thing where everyone talks at once on conference calls, I'll call you one by one to introduce yourselves. If you want to just give, a minute or so of who you are, kind of the work that you do. So Erica, would you like to go first and just kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Erica. My background is CrossFit coaching, actually. I started there, and I'm a fitness coach. I worked for the Y up until COVID. So that's my background. But I have been putting together a program and running a program up in New Hampshire called Strong Her. Basically, it utilizes functional fitness with a mix of self-defense for primarily women survivors of domestic violence. And it's using fitness to process trauma through the body, using movement to try and build resilience and heal ourselves, and allowing people to start to listen to their body, and to see what they need, to be able to function through the day, and while they're still either coping with trauma or, things like that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. How about Russ? Would you like to go next?
My name is Russell Lamberti. I work for Boys and Girls Club of Boston. I've been in youth development for about 19 years right now, which seems incredible. I've been working for nonprofits for about 19 years as well. My club is located in Roxbury. We see about 150 kids a day. We are currently, we've been closed, for about 4 weeks right now, but we are trying to stay in contact with as many kids as possible through its Zoom meetings, FaceTime, text. So I have a staff, I think, of about 13 right now. We all have goals that we have to do for the week. The biggest thing for us right now is just trying to make sure that we're reaching every family and make sure that if they do have a need, that they know that they can turn to us. The one thing that I love about my job, and I would say that I miss the most right now, is actually it's all the noises. So my club's a very loud place, even though we try to keep it quiet during certain times, but there's never a time where you don't hear kind of that positivity when you walk into the building. There's just a great vibe there. So that's the one thing that I probably love about my job the most.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And last but certainly not least, my friend and colleague, Gibbs.
Hi, I'm Gibbs Saunders. I am the Executive Director of HealthWorks Community Fitness in Dorchester, Mass. HealthWorks Community Fitness is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to providing fitness and wellness education to women and children in low-income communities of Boston. Our center is 11,000 square feet and we have over 2,000 members. Of course, we're closed right now because of COVID, but I wanted to join this conversation. I'm an exercise physiologist, been in the fitness industry and nonprofits for, similar to Russ, over very long time, over 15 years. And I actually have experience with trauma-informed fitness and really parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system regulation, and have done different programs at our center around that. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all so much for being here and taking time. I know you guys are all so busy. This is wonderful. So I think we'll just get started from there. Like Brooke said, I'll kind of ask like the first question, and then from there, Brooke and I will be talking very little. We kind of just want you guys to, have a conversation that flows and, jump in wherever you guys see fit and whenever you feel like you can, lend some of your expertise. So the first question, Erica, I'm actually going to ask this to you, and obviously everyone else can jump in, but so what have you noticed about, the current environment in terms of stress and emotions that are coming out? Like how has, what's the biggest thing that you've noticed in dealing with that?
I mean, it's the level of stress that people are experiencing right now is huge. We've all literally been like, our schedules have been flipped upside down. Life is completely different now. We kind of live in a society where we just kind of like go through the day, we go through the motions of stuff. I don't think people, we've figured out how to like have to dull emotions as we're working and we're dealing with kids and everything. And I think now what's happening is everyone's been brought home to wherever their homes are, and they're really starting to experience the stress of whether they're working from home and it's a different environment, whether they've been laid off from their job, whether they're working from home and they have to homeschool their kids and balance all of that. The feeling of being completely inadequate right now, whether because of their job, because they can't be with other family members that need help. The stress is astronomical right at the moment. And I think that for the first few weeks, what I was seeing was a lot of people, kind of at first like, oh, like I can get stuff done. I can paint my house and I can do all this. And the kind of like honeymoon period is worn off now. And so now what I'm seeing a lot of is, and what I'm getting a lot of, texts and phone calls and, hearing from people is they're incredibly overwhelmed. They don't know how to manage the emotions they're having. They actually feel like the emotions that they're having, they think they're wrong or bad. Like I'll have a mom call and be like, I'm crying today. I'm crying every day. I don't know why, and you can hear her kids screaming in the background, and I know why. Or, you know, I've had people now are, some people are not being as productive because what's happening is, you know, our world is scary right now. You know, there's a lot of really things that people are fearful of, rightly so. You know, you're seeing a lot of stuff on the media. You're hearing a lot of, you know, mixed messages about how dangerous the virus is. You know, you're going to the grocery store, you're seeing people wear masks, you're wiping everything down. You bring your groceries in the house, you're wiping everything down. There's this consistent level of fear that's staying right here that people don't understand like how to manage, and now it's becoming a real struggle. And you know, I had someone call the other day, and you know, they were just checking in, whatever, and as they start talking, they're a military individual, and all of a sudden they started talking about like how this, you know, felt normal as when they were in combat. They're used to being in one spot and they're used to being around specific people. And so they're just used to this. And then it kind of translated into talking about how the level of anger that person was feeling was astronomical, and how they didn't know why, and how it was equivalent to something they felt years ago, and they couldn't equate. They were like, and it was interesting, like from being an outsider, like walking through that, this person talking about COVID, talking about all the stuff's going on, translating that into what it feels like for something in the past being triggered, and then these feelings, yet and then saying at the end, I'm so sorry, like this, you know, I'm so sorry, like people don't have jobs right now, I shouldn't be complaining about this, whatever. And I think the biggest thing right now is that every single person, I would be concerned about people right now if they were like super happy and they're like, no, I'm totally fine, everything's great, like whatever, you know. I think everyone's experiencing some significant level of stress in some avenue of their life. And it's going to be different for everybody, but it's pretty severe right now.
I would like to come in on that. I actually feel like the COVID is really just a lens that's magnifying what's already there.
Yeah.
You know, I think being in close quarters with, you know, whoever you're with really can bring up a whole set of what, you know, fears, feelings, trauma. So I think the COVID is just something that has sort of stirred stuff up. I'm not saying for everybody, but if somebody has a background in domestic violence or abuse, of course that's going to come up. I think family dynamics is important to talk about, because I think that since there's a quarantine, that stuff is going to be much more magnified. You know, the dynamics of feeling isolated, set apart from your family, neglected, hurt, not seen. All of those things sort of come out now, I think, in a more vivid way because of the situation. You know, and I think that's really the hard part to understand, is that what Erica was referring to. It's like things are triggered, they're just triggered more.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and you know, I think all the skill sets, like I think, you know, you get it, you're in your life trying to focus on the present, you have all these things you're going to do, but now you don't have that. So it's just like you're in this sort of microscope, and you know, things come up more. I mean, they do. So it's like, how do you get out of the frozen state of fear? Because that's what's being triggered for a lot of people who have abuse or domestic violence in their background, is this frozen state of fear.
Gibbs and maybe Erica too, you both kind of have this background in trauma and trauma-informed fitness. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the physiology behind what those emotions feel like. Because I always think of it as like a hot wire, and it gets hotter and tighter as kind of the emotions rise. But there's an actual physiology to that, right?
Yep. So, I mean, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system when somebody has abuse in their background, they often activate certain parts of their brain that are connected to, and I've heard Erica refer to it in previous conversations, like, a very vigilant state, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody who has that background is in that vigilant state quite often versus somebody who does not have that. Especially if it's developmental and occurs over the survivor's childhood. So it's really a horrible feeling of feeling hypervigilant and afraid. And it is physiological. Like I said, you have increased heart rate, you have a different part of your brain working that's like really connected to surviving versus navigating through the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you just talked about the surviving. So I think we're all in survival mode right now.
Yep.
And I think what people don't understand is that when you're in survival mode, your body can't do certain things. Like I'll use the example of homeschooling our kids right now and working from home. There's so many people that are so frustrated and have said, hey, I want my kids to be going to school right now, but I can't focus. I can't think straight. I can't, I feel like I can't process this stuff. And they're correct. Like what's happening is their body is in this survival mode and their brain really can't do this right now.
Right.
Their brain really does need to be able to have things, to do things during the day that are nurturing to the body and to the mind, because that's really, right now our buckets are full. All of our buckets are full. And as we add more to that, it's just spilling over, and we need to at least kind of maintain it a little bit below, spilling over if we can. And so it really is a survival mode right now. And what I think a lot of people are cycling through that fight, flight, or freeze throughout the day. What one person that's experienced domestic violence or one individual is going to experience for fight, flight, or freeze is going to be different for another person. And so I don't know that people who don't understand this stuff are probably able to recognize. They could tell you how they feel, but I don't think they recognize that they're kind of cycling through this thing throughout the day of this like freeze state, this fight, like I'm super angry. I also people are cycling through a lot of like the stages of grief, because of what's going on. So how that kind of feels in the body for each person is going to be really different. And I think that people, stress, it could be anything. People will say, I feel like my body's burning, I feel like my muscles feel tired. I feel like, and so like when you're looking at it from a fitness perspective, that's where you have to start really like listening to each individual person. They're going to experience it differently and how they're going to process through those stages that we're all kind of experiencing right now.
I just want to say one thing. I am actually concerned about the quarantine setting up in a dynamic like a prison. Okay. When you are a survivor of abuse or survivor of domestic violence, you are essentially in a prison. Yes, you get to go to school. Yes, you get to go to your, extended family, but you are really in a prison because you are living with your abuser. So if you're living with your abuser, you're in a prison. I get concerned about the quarantine reenacting that. So I want survivors to understand, or people to understand, that there's tools they can use now that will sort of show they're not in a prison right now. It's really sad.
Interesting that you kind of like brought that up, Gibbs, because I have like one case right now where the woman actually just came out of like she finally, prior to this, was able to have freedom. And what's interesting is she can't understand why all of us around here are having such a hard time with being quarantined, because literally this individual lived that way for 10 years. And for her, it's like, it's absolutely normal. And so like, she still considers herself to have more freedom now being quarantined to her house without her abuser than she does otherwise.
Exactly.
And it's been really interesting to like have conversations with her and stuff, because yeah, like to see,
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is. I mean, it is. Like I often refer to, it's a prison. It's somebody's house is their prison. So.
Yeah.
So it's interesting sort of listening to, you know, your expertise in working with people who have survived domestic violence or trauma. And I think it's not just, you know, limited to those populations, these emotions that we're feeling. I mean, you're talking about the stages of grief and sort of the stressors. I think it's something sort of relevant to everyone. I think everyone is in a way experiencing it. Survivors maybe more so because it's triggering certain things.
Right.
But I'm hoping people who are listening can maybe not feel so alone, and just hearing that all of these emotions are normal, right? And there's kind of a physiology behind them. And Russ, I wanted to hear a little bit from you, since you work with a lot of families and kids. You know, what are you kind of seeing and hearing?
I like to think that most things that I'm hearing from my families are positive. So anytime I have a conversation with them, I actually try to take the focus off of what's going on in their life right now, and I try to tell them something positive about either myself, a staff person, or maybe another member at the club, because we're so in tune to ourselves right now. And if we're having a bad day, we kind of assume that everyone else might too. And I think just hearing that maybe a classmate is having a great day, I think that's an important thing. And I think my job and my team's job is we never want to start the conversation and end it in a negative way. So the conversations that I've had, I've left all of them feeling better. And I think whether it's a text, FaceTime, a Zoom call, or just a phone call, I'll give you an example. There was a little girl where I think 5 of us called her the same day because it was obviously a big day for her. She just turned 8, and her mom sent me a photo of her all dressed up in her cake, right? And I was like, oh my God, like this totally made my day. I go, I have to tell her this. Like, I have to tell her how her birthday in this photo actually made my day better. And I kind of used that the rest of the day to contact my staff and a few other families to say, hey, did you guys know that today's JoJo's birthday? So then a bunch of my other staff called, their friends called her. So I think it's important that we're kind of focusing on what's positive every day. And I think we acknowledge the negative, we acknowledge kind of the sadness we have, but I also think it's important that once we figure out something positive, that we do kind of hold on to that. A lot of my parents, I don't have conversations with daily, and I might get a text message and I can tell if they need something, because it usually starts off kind of quiet, and eventually I just ask them, what do you need from me? And maybe it's art supplies, maybe it's games, maybe it's groceries, maybe it's just a phone call. So I think figuring out what is going to be positive for you is important first, and then we can help others. So I know I can't do my job if I wake up and I'm thinking the walls are closing in on me, I'm going to lose my job, this or that. So it's really important for me when I wake up every day is I am communicating with my staff that today is a new day. Let's do something different today, but let's try to contact these families and tell them something really, really cool. So I went for a hike the other day and I actually FaceTimed about 10 kids on my hike. And I was like, you guys have no clue where I'm at. I'm like sweaty, dirty. My dog's mad at me. And I'm like, this is awesome because I actually feel like I'm with all of you guys. And they kept saying is like, I want to go to this place. Like, how can I get there? So that was a great moment for them. It's hopefully I can set that up where they can go for this hike or they can just get outside and try it. But I think my families as a whole are trying to be as positive as they can. I think all of our posts, we don't try to delve on that we're not there because we are there. We're just there like a different way.
So Erica and Gibbs, I'm wondering if you could talk through, sometimes when you're in this cycle of emotion, it's hard to get out, right? And it's hard to kind of do something positive for yourself or even know what you need when you're sort of buried under all of these feelings. I'm wondering if you have any advice for people who maybe feel like the walls are closing in on them and how they can kind of either break that cycle or just kind of find some levity.
Yeah, I think for one, like connection to people, I think is huge right now. I know that like the domestic violence organizations are trying to do a really good job right now of, when people are calling in, being able to talk with them with any of the crisis lines or anything that they have available, to be able to just like talk through stuff. I think it's trying to reach out, reach out to people. It's good to be able to, kind of like what, Russ said, it's good to be able to like acknowledge the negative emotions, but I think it is great to have something positive like on the back end of it, to give people hope. Like as humans, we have this like really unique ability to simultaneously hold like grief and sadness while we have joy and happiness. I think right now, people sometimes don't realize that, that you can be sad and be grieving stuff and also find joy in your day. Or even if joy is like the top, find some happiness in your day. And so I think that communication is the first one. I think trying to really care for your body. A lot of what's happening right now that I kind of see on social media and stuff is, people posting memes and things about the quarantine 15 and like how much, people are drinking and things like that. And I take that as like how people are trying to cope through something, and maybe they don't understand that there's other coping skills that they could use. And so I think it's really important to remember that we need to care for our body. We need to drink water every day. We need to fill our body with like really healthy food, if we have the ability to access that. We need to make sure we're getting sleep. Our bodies are a machine. If we don't have sleep, we're not going to function. If we don't have food and stuff, we're not going to function. So I think that's important. And I think exercise is actually really big. Even if you're taking a walk outside, even if you have even if you have no gym equipment, literally, I could give you a million things that you could use in your house right now to work out with. And just by exercising and raising your endorphins and depending on what you're doing for exercise, making you feel powerful, all of these things are going to kind of help you, to kind of like empty that bucket like we were talking about earlier, to really, give yourself, I think naming like 5 things that you're grateful for every single day, whether it is something as simple as like, I'm still healthy, Like my neighbor today called and he said, hey, can I take your trash? I'm going to the dump. Things like that people, I think that people are really starting to like help each other, so finding those things that you're grateful for every single day, and remembering that even though, we are away from people physically and we're out of our quote unquote element right now, that we still have the ability to have goals, and that especially right now, people want to help each other. We want to help each other and make sure that people have food and shelter and that we're being successful at like whatever it is. So those are a few things. I think about.
Yeah, I agree with Erica on many of those points. I think they're very accurate. I think the communication is number one. Even if you only have a phone, if you have access to the internet, you can reach out to, let's just say, I know Erica always brings up the mom lens, other mothers. Let's say you want to reach out to other survivors. I have found myself getting more connected to RAINN, RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. They're the biggest organization that is dedicated to preventing, childhood sexual abuse, rape. And, I found myself being drawn more into seeing how to participate with them. I think it's important to be able to, even if you are in a situation feeling sort of dissociated or robotic, to be able to take care of yourself and, as Erica said, talk to a friend, talk to a family member, somebody that you trust about how you're feeling, because it does change. It will change. And it just takes, I think, awareness and it takes intention. That's one thing I love about Erica when she talks, because there's a lot of intention behind her recovery, my recovery, anybody's recovery. There's just a lot of focused intention, and that's really what you have to have.
Yeah, you do. I think also too, when we help others, it means we're kind of getting outside of ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, try to think about something that you can do for someone else, even if it's like, like on Easter, my kids and we made a big sign for my grandmother. She's 90, she's in old folks community. No one can come in, no one's going out, and they were standing in the yard holding the sign up. And literally my top thing that was grateful for that day was seeing how happy a 90-year-old woman was, because you're outside of yourself, you're doing something for someone else. And I think that also can really kind of like flip that switch in your head a little bit, to take, to kind of get you outside of yourself, get you outside of those feelings for a minute and try and see that there is something else. And I think that because right now that's really hard, we go into stores and stuff and everyone, they say that you're like the combination of the 5 most people that you're around. And right now people are struggling. You go into grocery stores, people aren't smiling, they're covered in masks or stuff. I went into the store today, I left there, I called my friend and I said, for the first time I went in the grocery store since this whole time, and this woman's milk was dripping, and I said, hey, like your milk is spilling, and from far away, and it was like a human conversation with somebody else, this connection, whatever. And I think like we have to create those, like even if we're like we have to create those to continue to know that like we're out there, we're still human, we're people, and like things are changing. But I think definitely like getting kind of outside of ourselves, finding ways to help other people, is also another really good, something that can help you.
Gibbs, you talked about that feeling of dissociating or being robotic. I sort of feel like that's something that people might resonate with right now. And I'm hearing it a lot in like, oh my gosh, why am I sleeping so much? Or I'm so tired, or I lack in motivation. And maybe any of you have insight on that, but sort of what does that feel like? Why does it happen? And how can people sort of cope with that or address it?
Dissociation really is about your brain and your limbic part of your brain sort of taking care of yourself. And if something is very painful, reactivating, you basically, the feeling really is that you're not present. It's like you're almost, I think it's different for everyone, and Erica, please add in, but it's almost like you are observing the situation from an outside point of view, and you're not having the feelings. So when you are in a dissociative state, you almost feel like you don't feel anything really. It's blank.
Yeah, it's a protective mechanism for your body, and I think everyone's going to experience it differently depending on like the level of fear or like some or whatever's going on. But it's not like you're watching your body. It's not like you're watching yourself from up high. It's like your body's numb. It doesn't want to. It's too much. It's too much for your body.
It can be, it's like I said, it's different for everybody, but I think in general, it's a feeling of nothing. Someone could say, someone could say something really that could be upsetting, and you just are like, okay, well, okay. And then it's also a state that you function very well in. It's a state that you can get a lot done in because you aren't connected to your emotions. So the robotic part can really kind of take effect. I think that, it's not bad or good. As Erica said, it's protective. So it can serve you in some ways, but in other ways it can be very detrimental. So,
yeah, like at the end of like with impact, when we're teaching people how to do self-defense at the end of the fight or the quote unquote fight, it's asking people like name something that's around you, identifying like steps or whatever, because oftentimes when when some people are in a dissociative state, they may not be able to do that. They may be focusing so much on like one specific thing that they may not be able to, identify something that's around them, but it's bringing them back to like center. When you're dissociating, you're not always grounded, you're not grounded, like you're there, but so I think it's protective.
Yeah. And I just think I think one of the things that's really important is not to judge it. And not to say it's bad, you need to get out of it, because you don't have a choice if you're in it. You just don't. Like, you're in it because it's protecting you, and you're trying to claw your way through the day, basically. So I just think it's important to talk about, because it does happen a lot. And as Brooke said, it's kind of on a spectrum. And so I think ways that, I have managed it is a variety. I mean, it's a variety of things: talking to people, reading. I did a lot of reading about it. I have done a lot of research on RAIN, the organization that I'm a part of. I think that helps me, is the research. But not everybody's like that, and everybody kind of manages it in a different way.
I think something great that you said, Gibbs, is that, and something that I think is really important for people to understand is like, whatever you're feeling right now, don't judge it. Like our bodies, and I'll even say this for people that are like my birth fit moms and stuff, where like we're talking about labor and delivery, I'll tell them like, our bodies are honestly amazing. Our bodies have all of these dissociative, whatever it is, whatever our body knows honestly exactly what it needs to do at that time. And a lot of times as humans, whether it's something that's been drilled in through society or whatever, we fight against a lot of stuff. And I think right now, sometimes I've had to say to people like, maybe we need to lean into this for a minute and see what's going on. And if And, you know, and I will have to judge the person and say, like, do they have the capacity to lean into this right now, or don't they have the capacity to lean into that? Because you don't want to leave someone feeling worse than they were. But
No,
something
right.
that I hope that people understand is that, for one, don't judge how you're feeling. Your body is actually doing exactly what it needs to do.
Mhm.
And the second piece of that is, sometimes it's going to suck. Sometimes our feelings are going to feel uncomfortable. And so, like, if we can give you tools to process through what your body's doing right now, and you can understand that, okay, right now I'm way up here, I'm having a panic attack. I know on the back end of this panic attack, I'm not going to feel anything. Why? Because I was so high, my body's going to go so low in order to regulate it. And when people start to understand that there's chemicals in your body involved and that there's a process to this, it kind of takes the fear away from what everyone's feeling right now. And it gives them education to understand, but don't judge it, and understand that your body is really smart and knows what it's doing.
Yeah.
Just want to ask something quick.
Yeah.
That you know, that feeling of being like numb. How do you guys feel about, you know, that we're in the middle of it right now, but there's moments where it might last longer, or there might be a trigger for it. And I think a lot of people get that from maybe, say, like a social media post, or just watching the news, because eventually we look at these numbers growing and they're like, oh, I used to know the numbers, like the first week, I'd be like, hey, like that's 1,000 more cases, 1,200. And now it's just kind of like, look, the numbers are just going to keep going up. I honestly can't keep track anymore. And you almost forget about it's actually people's lives, and it's just a number. And then when you look at it and you have to put a face to it, and there might be another story on, and then all of a sudden the numbers are the same, but for some reason there was a trigger in some story or what you read, and then it comes over you, and you kind of have to realize, like, okay, so this is how I'm feeling now. Afterwards, I might feel A, B, and C, but it's up to me to acknowledge that. So I was wondering how you guys feel about how the media does it, or social media, or we all have that, like, one or two friends that are kind of like the sky's falling, even if it's not during this. So, like, how do you guys think that affects people, I guess?
Like the social media and the news.
I mean, because
I think,
it's tough to not turn on the TV and not.
Right.
see
I
that.
think I personally don't see news and social media speaking about what dissociation is. I think you're right. I know people experience it. I think on different levels, but I don't think it's spoken about, even though it exists. So I personally think just identifying it and understanding it happens is really, really a big deal. You know, when you start tracking it and going, wait a minute, I'm dissociating, you really start learning about yourself. So, but I think society and news and media is, you know, full of all kinds of potentially triggering things. So, you know, in some ways it's better to just decide for yourself, even if you want to watch it. Or I don't even go to social media, like I don't have it. So I just think it's, you know, really kind of, you have to identify what's harmful. Erica, can you speak on that?
Yeah, I think one of the things right now that I think we need to be really protective of ourselves. And I think especially with the media right now, the media's job is to stir up emotions in us with their stories. And I think we need to make the decision. And so what's hard right now is there's two sides. First of all, we need to make a decision about whether, okay, like I see Facebook and people post stuff. I go on the news and I see this stuff. if it's starting to cause you anxiety, if it's starting to bring up dissociative emotions, fear, and all of that, then I think you need to make the choice about whether that's something that's going to be helpful or harmful for you. I think that there's a lot of information flying around right now. I think Russ is right. You know, all of a sudden you see the numbers rising, and they don't become people anymore. They become numbers. These are people's family. Just that one person that passed away, how many lives did that person touch in their life, you know? And so I think you're not like, for myself personally, when I stopped, like, I chose not to look at the news anymore. And it wasn't because I don't have complete compassion for the people who have lost family members. It was because I have 3 kids at home, and I have to be present for them. And I'm not fully present for them when I am seeing numbers like mass is almost going to hit 1,000 people that have passed away. That is scary to me. And I have to kind of put myself in a bubble and say, what is going to help me be most productive today? And so you have to become really protective of the information that you're taking in, you know, in your day, because the news and the social media right now are really overwhelming to people. You know, people used to use social media as a way to kind of check out, you know, like, hey, I'm going to scroll through Facebook for a minute. I've had a really long day. You can't really do that anymore. You know, you're scrolling through social media and people are posting some really scary stuff. And, you know, and then, you know, you don't sleep at night and you're concerned and worried. And I think that like, you really have to start like screening what you're bringing in, into yourself. And then, I don't know, going from there.
Yeah. No.
That kind of answer your question, Russ, a little bit?
Yeah. And, you know, it was, you brought up a good point earlier, is that, you know, there's, if someone was happy this whole time and kept saying they feel fine, you probably know that they aren't, right? So I do think it's important just to, you know, just like, if you're not feeling yourself, that's exactly how you should feel, because we're all doing something different now. And I think it's important that we let people know that not many of us are getting up and going to work and doing the exact same things. And I think that can bring a level of stress to people that they have never had prior. And I think leaving their homes during the week might be the best thing for them. And now they're stuck there and they don't want to be there. They have no other choice. And I think that is kind of we have to acknowledge that, and we have to make sure that we're reaching out to those people, or at least letting them know that we're here for them. You know, that there's, I would say there's people that we talk to often, maybe a couple days a week, that might be in this situation, and we just don't know it because they're not secure enough to actually acknowledge what they're going through. So I'm hoping all of us can maybe find a few of those people during this and open up that door for them, at least give them some hope during it. So
yeah.
Well, I think that's a really wonderful note to end on. We're kind of under the hour here. Okay. So I wanted to thank everyone for being a part of this. I hope anyone listening maybe found some insight into understanding yourself better, how to help yourself, and then how to help others, and just kind of what to look out for as people are dealing with this emotional roller coaster. So hopefully we will continue this conversation.
Thank you, Brooke. Thanks for hosting, Brooke.
Topics. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. You all
learned so much from you guys.
I've learned a ton. I am just so blessed to have spent this time with you all here. And Avery, thank you.
You guys rock.
Yeah,
no, thank you. No, you guys is great. Brooke, thank you for making it happen.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everybody. Well, you all have a great day. Go do something active, as well as anyone else listening. Go do something good for yourself today. So we'll chat soon.
Bye-bye.
Great day.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.